Last week, my father called me crying. Not the quiet, dignified kind of crying I grew up with. Not the kind where his voice stayed steady and pride held everything together. This was different. His breathing shook. His words kept breaking in the middle. "Bianca, please. I can't do this alone anymore. I need you to come home. I need you to take care of me." 2 years ago, I had called that same man, barely able to breathe through my tears, and told him I had stage 3 cancer. His answer back then had been calm, controlled, almost irritated. "We can't deal with this right now. Your brother's wedding is more important." So when he asked me to put my life on hold for him, I didn't yell. I didn't cry. I just said the same 4 words he once gave me. "I can't deal with this right now." But to understand why those words came so easily, you have to go back to the day my life split into before and after. I was 28, living in Boston, working as a senior graphic designer. I had a small apartment with tall windows that let in golden afternoon light, a job that challenged me in the best ways, and a stubborn little green plant I had somehow kept alive for 3 years. My life wasn't perfect, but it was peaceful. It was mine. Then my phone rang. "Miss Bradford, this is Dr. Morris's office. We have your biopsy results. Can you come in tomorrow morning at 8? No one gets called in early for good news. The next morning, I sat in a pale blue chair across from Dr. Morris. I still wore my work blazer, like I could squeeze this appointment in before heading to the office. "Stage 3 breast cancer," she said gently. "The tumor is aggressive but treatable. We need to begin chemotherapy as soon as possible." Her voice sounded far away, like it was traveling through water. My hands rested in my lap, perfectly still, while everything inside me collapsed. "Do you have someone who can drive you home?" she asked. I didn't plan. "I'll call my dad." Because somewhere deep down, I still believed parents show up when it matters most. I walked into the hallway, sat on a bench, and called him. My hands were shaking so badly I almost dropped my phone. He picked up on the second ring. "Bianca, I'm in the middle of something." "Dad," my voice cracked. "I just left the doctor. I have cancer, stage 3. Silence. Not shocked silence, not worried silence. Just pause. Then a slow breath. "Bianca, your mother and I can't deal with this right now. Your brother's wedding is in 4 months. There's so much going on." I stopped breathing. "I'm scared," I whispered. "You've always been strong," he replied, his voice firming up like he was giving business advice. "Independent. You'll figure it out. I have to go. We're meeting the caterer about the venue deposit." The call ended. I sat on that bench for 45 minutes, staring at the blank wall across from me, realizing I had just been told my life-threatening illness was bad timing. Chemotherapy started the next week. I drove myself. The infusion center was quiet except for the soft beeping of machines and the low murmur of daytime television. Reclining chairs lined the room, each one holding someone fighting for their life. Almost every chair had 2 people. A husband holding his wife's hand. A teenage boy's mother reading aloud beside him. An elderly man's daughter feeding him spoonfuls of soup. I sat alone in chair 7, clutching a blanket and pretending I didn't notice. A nurse with kind eyes adjusted the IV in my port. "First time?" she asked softly. I nodded. "Most people bring someone." I forced a smile. "They're busy." I texted my mom, "Starting chemo today. I'm really scared." 6 hours later, long after the drugs had made my stomach twist and my bones ache, she replied, "At the florist with Ashley. Peonies or roses?" I stared at the screen, while nausea crawled up my throat. Then I typed back, "Roses are nice." I didn't tell her I threw up in the hospital bathroom. I didn't tell her I cried in the parking garage before driving home. That became my pattern. I protected them from my pain, while they protected a wedding from my existence. By my 3rd chemo session, my hair had started coming out in strands that clung to my pillow and clogged the shower drain. That was when I met Avery. She was a nurse practitioner who helped run a support group. She sat beside me one afternoon and said, "You don't have to pretend with me." Something in her voice broke through the wall I had built. So I told her about my dad's response, about the wedding, about doing everything alone. She didn't say, "They mean well." She didn't say, "At least you have family." She just listened, and then she showed up. She drove me home when I was too dizzy to stand. She brought soup I could actually keep down. She sat on my bathroom floor at 3 in the morning when my hair fell out in clumps and I didn't recognize the woman in the mirror. Medical bills started arriving halfway through treatment. After insurance, deductibles, and copays, I owed $47,000. I sold my car, canceled subscriptions, stopped everything that wasn't survival. Then I did the one thing I swore I wouldn't. I asked my father for help. His reply came 2 hours later. "We just finished paying for Austin's wedding. We don't have extra right now. Maybe try a personal loan." No, I'm sorry. No hesitation. So I took out a loan at 14% interest. Because when it's your life on the line, pride becomes a luxury. I have the hospital records from those months. 36 visits. Visitor column, none, none, none. Not once did anyone from my family sit beside my chemo chair. When my brother's wedding day arrived, my father called again. "We think it's best if you don't come. You look unwell, and we don't want to upset the mood." I said I understood. Then I watched the wedding photos on Facebook from my bed, bald, exhausted, wrapped in blankets. Caption, "The happiest day of our family's life." 6 months later, I rang the bell at the oncology ward to mark the end of chemotherapy. Avery was there. My family was not. That was the day I stopped waiting for them to become the people I needed. And it was the beginning of becoming someone stronger than I ever wanted to be. Radiation came after chemo. If chemotherapy felt like poison burning through my veins, radiation felt quieter, but cruel in a slower, more patient way. Every weekday at 7:15 a.m., I lay on a cold metal table while a machine rotated above me, humming like it was bored with the whole thing. The technicians were kind, efficient. They drew tiny purple dots on my skin to line everything up. "Hold still, breathe normally." I did exactly what they said. It was the only part of my life I still had control over. By then, my savings were gone. I picked up freelance design work between treatments, laptop balanced on my knees, anti-nausea meds dissolving under my tongue while I answered client emails like everything was fine. Because if I stopped working, I couldn't pay rent. If I couldn't pay rent, I had nowhere to recover. If I had nowhere to recover, I didn't let myself finish that thought. Avery kept showing up. She never made big speeches, never said, "I'm your family now." She just acted like it. Grocery bags on my counter, clean laundry folded on the couch, a thermos of ginger tea on my bedside table. One night, I woke up to a fever of 102. My body was shaking so hard my teeth chattered. I texted her at 1:12 a.m. Didn't even write a full sentence, just fever, scared. She called in under 10 seconds. "I'm coming, don't get out of bed." She drove me to the ER in sweatpants and a hoodie, hair still messy from sleep. Sat in the stiff plastic chair beside my hospital bed until morning, arguing with a nurse when they took too long with my labs. I remember watching her from the pillow, thinking this is what love looks like. Not DNA, not shared last names, just showing up. My family, meanwhile, posted countdowns to my parents' anniversary cruise. Radiation ended in late October. My skin was burned dark red, my energy non-existent, but my scans showed no visible tumors. "No evidence of disease," Dr. Morris said, smiling. I cried in her office, huge, shaking sobs that came from somewhere buried deep. Not just relief. Grief. Grief for the version of me that thought love was automatic. Grief for the girl who believed if she was good enough, strong enough, successful enough, her family would choose her. They hadn't. And somehow, I was still here. Recovery was slow, painfully slow. I had to relearn how to trust my body. Some days, walking to the mailbox felt like climbing a mountain. Therapy helped. So did the support group Avery dragged me to every Thursday night. That's where I met Daniel. He was there with his older sister, who was going through leukemia treatment. He brought snacks for everyone, even though he barely knew us. Sat in the back at first, quiet, listening. One evening, I made a dark joke about chemo brain turning me into a human goldfish. He laughed, not the awkward pity laugh people give sick people, a real one. After the meeting, he handed me a granola bar. "For the walk home," he said. "Low blood sugar makes everything worse." We started talking after that. At first, it was just rides to group when Avery was on shift. Then coffee. Then long walks where we compared scars, mine physical, his emotional from watching someone he loved fight. He never treated me like fragile glass. When I told him about my family, he didn't rush to defend them. He just said, "That must have been incredibly lonely." And somehow, that simple sentence healed something tiny inside me. Months passed. My hair grew back in soft curls. My strength returned inch by inch. Freelance work turned into a remote creative director role with a health startup that didn't blink at my medical history. I built a life that fit the person I had become. One evening, Daniel and I were cooking dinner in my apartment, music playing, onions sizzling in the pan, when he asked, "Do they ever check on you?" I didn't have to ask who he meant. "Not really," I said, stirring the sauce. "Birthdays, holidays, mostly surface stuff." He nodded, like he expected that. Then he said, carefully, "You know you don't owe anyone access to you just because you share blood, right?" I looked at him, wooden spoon in hand, heart thudding. I had spent my whole life believing the opposite. That night, for the first time, I let myself imagine a future where family was chosen, not assigned. A future where love didn't have to be begged for. And without realizing it, I stopped being the daughter waiting for a call that would never come, and started becoming the woman who would never abandon herself again. The first message from my mother came on a quiet Sunday afternoon. I was on the couch, feet tucked under Daniel's leg, half watching a cooking show while answering emails. My phone buzzed once on the coffee table. "Mom." Just seeing the word made my chest tighten. I didn't open it right away. I had learned not to rush toward things that used to hurt me. When I finally did, the message was short. "We heard your scans are clear. I suppose congratulations are in order." I stared at the screen, waiting for the rest. There wasn't any. "No, I'm proud of you." "No, I wish I'd been there." Just polite distance, like I'd passed an exam she hadn't studied for. Daniel noticed my face change. "Everything okay?" "Yeah," I lied automatically, then stopped myself. "No, it's my mom." He didn't ask to read it, didn't tell me how to feel. He just squeezed my ankle gently. "Take your time." So I did. I set the phone face down and let the wave roll through me. The old ache. The little girl voice whispering, maybe this time will be different. But it was. That night, I replied with 3 words. "Thank you, I'm well." Nothing more. Weeks later, my brother called. Not texted, called. I almost didn't answer, but curiosity won. "Hey," he said, voice unsure. "I heard you're back at work full-time." "Yeah," I said, "I am." "That's good. That's really good." Silence stretched between us, thick and awkward. "I didn't realize how bad it was," he blurted suddenly. "When you were sick, Mom and Dad always said you had support there, that you were exaggerating how alone you felt." I closed my eyes. "I sent pictures," I said quietly. "Hospital bracelets, IV poles. I told you when my hair fell out." "I know," he whispered. I didn't want to believe they'd do that, so I didn't look too closely." There it was. Not cruelty. Cowardice. "I can't change what I did," he continued, "but I'm trying to understand it now." "That's your work to do," I replied. Not cold, just honest. We didn't fix anything on that call. But for the first time, he didn't pretend nothing had happened. After we hung up, I expected to feel wrecked. Instead, I felt steady. Like I was watching an old storm from inside a house I'd already rebuilt. Spring came. Daniel and I took a weekend trip to the coast. Windy beaches, salt in the air, my scarf whipping around as we laughed at how dramatic the waves looked crashing against the rocks. At one point, he took my hand and said, "I'm really glad you're still here." So simple. So huge. I squeezed back. Me too. That night, wrapped in hotel blankets, I realized something. Surviving had been the first victory. But learning, I deserved a peaceful life after survival. That was the real one. A month later, an envelope arrived in the mail. My parents' return address in the corner. Inside was a copy of their updated will. A highlighted section left a portion of their estate to me. No letter, no explanation, just paperwork. I stared at it for a long time, then laughed. Not happily, not bitterly either. Just amazed. When I needed presents, they offered money years later. I folded the papers back into the envelope and placed them in a drawer without responding. Because for the first time in my life, their version of love wasn't the only one on the table. Mine was better. Built slowly. Chosen carefully. Protected fiercely. And I wasn't trading it for anything. Summer settled in softly, the kind of warm that makes the city feel almost gentle. My life had found a rhythm I didn't have to fight for anymore. Work I loved, friends who showed up. Even my body, once a battlefield, had started to feel like home again. Scars faded from angry red to pale silver. My hair grew thick enough that strangers stopped giving me the sick smile. Most days, cancer felt like something that had happened to someone I used to know. Until the hospital bill's reminder arrived. It came by email, subject line bland and emotionless. Final notice before collection action. I opened the portal and stared at the balance. Even after insurance, even after assistance, even after every payment plan, the number still made my throat close. I had been chipping away at it for over a year, throwing every bonus, every freelance check at it. But interest is patient. Medical debt is relentless. Daniel found me at the kitchen table, laptop open, tears slipping down silently. "Hey," he said softly, kneeling beside me. "Talk to me." I turned the screen toward him. "This is what surviving costs," I whispered. He read the total, jaw tightening. "We'll figure it out." "I'm tired of figuring it out," I admitted. "I did everything right. I worked through treatment. I didn't ask them for money. I didn't ask for anything." The word "them" hung heavy in the air. That night, after he fell asleep, I sat alone on the balcony with a blanket around my shoulders and my laptop glowing in the dark. I pulled up old tax returns. Then theirs. Then the documents my accountant had once flagged, but I'd been too overwhelmed to examine. I saw it clearly now. The year I was in treatment, my parents had still claimed me as a dependent. I zoomed in on the numbers, heart pounding. Because of that, my eligibility for certain medical aid programs had been denied. My income on paper looked higher than it actually was. Assistance I should have received never came. I did the math 3 times. It wasn't a mistake that cost me a few $100s. It was tens of thousands. I leaned back in the chair, the night air suddenly too thin. They hadn't just been absent. Their choice had followed me into hospital billing systems and loan interest and collection warnings. Their decision had weight, consequences, damage. And for the first time, I didn't feel guilty for seeing it. The next morning, I called a lawyer. Her name was Priya Shah, calm voice, sharp questions. "Did they provide more than half of your financial support that year?" she asked. "No," I said, "not even close." "Did they have your permission to claim you?" "No." She paused only a second. "Then we have a case." Saying yes to legal action felt like stepping off a cliff. but it also felt like finally planting my feet. This wasn't revenge. It was correction. Weeks later, documents were filed. Notices sent, numbers calculated down to the cent. I didn't tell my parents first, because they hadn't told me when they signed those tax forms either. The call from my mother came 2 days after they were served. Her voice shook. "How could you do this to us?" I stood by the window, watching traffic crawl below. "I could ask you the same question. We didn't know it would hurt you." "You didn't check," I replied. "You just assumed I'd be fine." I was. Silence cracked through the line. "Your father is sick with worry," she whispered. "I was sick with cancer," I said gently, "and worry and debt alone." She started crying then, big, gasping sobs. And for the first time, I didn't rush to comfort her. "I'm not trying to destroy you," I said quietly. "I'm trying to repair what your choices broke." When we hung up, my hands were shaking. Daniel wrapped his arms around me from behind, chin on my shoulder. "You okay?" I nodded, even though tears slid down my face. "Yeah," I said. "I think I finally am." The legal process moved slower than emotion. Paperwork doesn't cry, it doesn't yell. It doesn't remember birthdays or hospital rooms. It just asks for proof and waits. Priya handled most of it, but sometimes she'd call to clarify a detail. "Do you have bank statements from that year?" "Yes." "Emails where you asked them for help and they declined?" "Yes." "Lease agreements in your name only?" "Yes." Every yes felt like reopening a scar. But it also felt like building something solid out of a story that had once been dismissed as miscommunication. My parents tried calling less after that first week. Instead, emails started coming. Long ones, emotional ones, defensive ones. "We never meant to hurt you. Families don't sue each other. This is tearing your father apart." I forwarded each one to Priya. "Do not respond emotionally," she reminded me. "Let the facts speak." So I did something I'd never done before. I stopped trying to manage their feelings. One evening, my brother showed up at my door again. This time, he didn't look angry. He looked exhausted. "They had to pull money from retirement," he said the moment I opened the door. "Dad had a panic attack." I let him in, gesturing toward the couch. "I'm not asking you to feel bad," he added quickly. I need to understand. Is there really no other way?" I sat across from him. "Do you remember the night I called you from the ER with that infection?" I asked. He nodded slowly. "You said you were swamped at work, that you'd visit when things calmed down." His eyes dropped. "They never really did they?" I continued. "Things were always busy, inconvenient, bad timing." "This is different," he whispered. "It isn't," I said gently. "It's just happening to you now." He covered his face with his hands. "I thought you were strong enough to handle it," he said through his fingers. "I was," I replied. "I just shouldn't have had to be alone." That broke something in him. I saw it. The illusion that being passive meant being innocent. "I can't fix what we did," he said hoarsely. "No," I agreed, "but you can stop pretending it didn't matter." He nodded, eyes red, and left quietly. Negotiations began in a conference room I never stepped into. Priya attended on my behalf, so did their lawyer. Numbers went back and forth, arguments about intent versus impact, responsibility versus misunderstanding. In the end, the law didn't care about their intentions, only the financial truth. When Priya called with the proposed settlement amount, I sat very still. It covered the denied aid, the excess taxes, the interest from the medical loans that had ballooned while I was trying to stay alive. "They've agreed to pay," she said, "in installments but legally binding. If they default, we escalate." I closed my eyes. "Okay," I whispered. I expected triumph. Instead, I felt grief. Because no amount of money could reimburse the nights I threw up alone on a bathroom floor, or the birthdays spent in waiting rooms, or the silence where parents should have been. But this wasn't about rewriting the past. It was about not letting it keep charging interest. The first payment hit my account on a gray Thursday morning. I stared at the notification for a long time before opening my banking app to confirm it was real. Daniel found me sitting on the edge of the bed, phone in hand. "It's done," I said. He sat beside me. "How do you feel?" I searched for the right word. "Lighter," I said finally. "Not happy, just lighter." That evening, we celebrated quietly. Takeout from my favorite Thai place. A walk after dinner, fingers intertwined. Halfway down the block, I stopped and looked up at the sky, streaked pink and gold. For so long, I thought closure meant them apologizing in exactly the right way, I said. Daniel squeezed my hand. "What do you think now?" "I think closure is when their choices stop controlling my future." And for the first time since diagnosis, that felt true. The final court confirmation came 6 months later. Not a dramatic trial, not a shouting match in a courtroom. Just a judge reviewing signed agreements, verified transfers, and documented impact. Justice, I learned, is often quiet. The settlement was approved, legally enforceable, non-dischargeable, structured in a way that protected me if they ever tried to disappear the debt through loopholes or technicalities. Priya called after the hearing. "It's done," she said. "Completely, they can't contest it now." I thanked her, hung up, and just sat there on my couch, staring at nothing. For years, my survival story had been about endurance. Now it included accountability. That changed something deep inside me. Not long after, my parents asked to meet. In person. Public place, lawyer advised, no emotional ambushes. We chose a quiet hotel lounge, halfway between our cities. I arrived first, not because I was nervous, but because I was. That was new. When they walked in, they looked older, smaller somehow, like life had pressed down on them the way illness once pressed down on me. My mother's eyes filled immediately. My father moved slower than I remembered, leaning slightly on a cane I hadn't seen before. We sat. No hugs. No pretending. "I'm glad you're healthy," my father said, voice rough. "Thank you," I replied calmly. A long silence followed, the kind that used to terrify me, the kind I used to rush to fill with reassurance. Not anymore. Finally, my mother spoke. "We thought if we didn't look too closely, it wouldn't be as real," she said. "Your illness, the distance, our failure." I held her gaze. It was real whether you looked or not. She nodded, tears slipping down. "We know that now." My father swallowed hard. "The money isn't the point," he said. "We know that." "I know you know," I answered, "but the money was the consequence." He gave a slow, ashamed nod. For the first time in my life, they weren't defending themselves. They were sitting in the truth. "I don't hate you," I said after a moment, "but I don't trust you either, and that's something you'll have to live with." They both looked like that hurt more than the lawsuit. Good. Not because I wanted to wound them, but because pain is what finally teaches people to see. "I hope you use whatever time we have left differently," I added. "With each other, with the people who show up." It wasn't forgiveness. It was release. When we stood to leave, my mother hesitated. "May I hug you?" I considered it. Then I stepped forward. The hug was brief, careful, not the desperate clutch of someone trying to erase the past. Just two humans acknowledging what had happened between them. And what never would again. Outside, Daniel was waiting by the car. "How'd it go?" he asked. I exhaled slowly, looking up at the open sky. "It ended," I said. Not the relationship, not history, but the hold it had on my future. Months turned into a year. My health stayed stable. My career grew. Daniel proposed one quiet evening in the kitchen while we were arguing about pasta sauce, and I said yes with tears in my eyes and flour on my hands. We built a life where love was loud in action, not silent in crisis. My parents stayed at a distance, respectful of boundaries they finally understood were real. My brother visited sometimes, trying in small, consistent ways to be better than he had been. And me. I stopped being the girl who waited to be chosen. I became the woman who chose herself. Cancer took my strength. My family's absence took my illusions. But accountability gave me back my power. And in the end, power used with clarity, not cruelty, is the strongest form of justice there is. If this story moved you, stay with the journey, subscribe, and don't forget to choose yourself too.